Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. um, I want to talk about flying. More specifically, I want to talk about my experience on a particular flight for a particular airline. Now, I know that probably almost all of you have been on an airplane at least once or twice in your lifetime. Um, if you haven't, you should do it because it's an experience. Flying is the safest way to travel. Uh, it can be cumbersome at times, um, but it's the quickest way to get from point A to point B. I'll be honest, I'm at a point in my life where if it's beyond a 5-hour drive, I gotta fly. Like I'm not trying to, and I really don't want to drive 5 hours to be honest. But I'm just being real with y'all. But anytime it's time for me to do something, more often than not, it's going to involve me flying. I I can't say that I like flying. I like flying. I just all of the stuff that comes with flying, I don't necessarily get down with sometimes, but that's beside the point. But to get where you want to go, to do what you got to do, you got to fly, right? So I want to talk to you about an experience that I had with um, a particular airline. Um, and I don't know how many of you saw the movie Soul Plane. Soul Plane, from what I can remember, because I've only seen like bits and pieces of Soul Plane. I didn't see the whole movie because why would I sit and watch that? But Soul Plane was this movie where you get this people on this airplane and like almost everything that could go wrong was going wrong. It was very hood like, very ghetto-fied, if you will. And just pure comedy, pure comical errors and all kind of stuff going on and shenanigans with this particular airline, right? So I didn't know that there was an actual real Soul Plane. I didn't realize this until I got on Soul Plane my damn self. So let's go back. This was pre-pandemic, so this is 2019, right? My wife and I, we make a trip. We're going to DC, going to see my boy Russ and his wife Lisa. Russ's sister-in-law was getting married, and we knew her since she was like a teenager. So it was I hadn't seen Russ in a couple of years, even though me and Russ talk and text every day. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. I hadn't seen Lisa in a couple of years. And this is like one of my best friends from college. We played ball together at South Carolina State University. You see it. But as I rock my South Carolina State University hoodie. But yeah, so so we was like, we were going to plan a trip to DC. It was, I'll be honest, it was spur of the moment, kind of last minute on the flight. So normally I fly Delta, right? When I can. And I normally don't fly any other airline but Delta. For this particular trip, the Delta flights were like astronomical. So I was like, yeah. And I I like to fly in first class when at all possible. So, I was just like, when I saw the prices for first class, I was like, I don't know about this. And so that wasn't going to be the killer. I mean, I can fly coach because I fly coach a lot. But, Delta was kind of beside the point. So my wife went online, Sharice went online, and she found these flights like dirt cheap, relatively speaking. And Russ lives in DC, or right outside of DC, PG County. And so we were flying, instead of flying into DC, we were going to fly into BWI, Baltimore Airport. And I think he's actually closer to BWI than he is it's either Reagan or Dulles. I can't remember which airport it was. But anyway, he's closer to BWI, the airport that we were going to fly to. Maybe about I don't know, 25-minute drive. So we were gonna fly in, catch an Uber to Russ's crib, whatever. And so that's how we were gonna do it, right? And so we get there. No. So we go to purchase the tickets, and Sharice finds the tickets on. And if you haven't guessed it by now, you see the cover art, Spirit Airlines. Now, keep in mind, I've never flown Spirit Airlines before. Never, I'd heard of them. I heard that they were cheap. The tickets were relatively cheap, and so I was like, all right, I'll check it out. Whatever. And again, this was a last minute ticket, so we got the ticket. I want to say the tickets were both. I think both tickets were under $200. Like I think the ticket might have been like, I don't know, like 60 a piece. Like so, it was mad cheap. So I'm like, bet. I there was no first class, unfortunately, so I was a little bummed about that. But nonetheless, I'm like, all right, cool. So we get the flight, right? And so normally, like when I'm traveling, you can get a vibe as to how everything is gonna go. For me, the vibe was off from the beginning. We get to the airport. We live in Atlanta. For those of you who don't know, so we get to Hartsfield Jackson Airport. Hartsfield Jackson is probably about 30 minutes from my crib. Drive to Hartsfield, park the car, go in or whatever like that. And so we get to the airport early, really early, because I don't like going to airports late. I don't like rushing for flights. I'd rather be at the airport 2 hours before my flight. International flights, 3 hours. I'm a firm believer in that because I don't ever want to miss the plane because I know the plane's not waiting for me. So anyway, we get there and we get to the gate, everything's cool. And then so they start, calling the people or whatever like that to start boarding. So we start boarding, we get on the plane, and I want to say did the bags fly free? I can't remember if the bags were free or not. But anyway, we got on the plane and then we sat down and they told us it was going to be a delay before we left. So we was like, damn, because we at this point, we ready to get to DC. We're leaving the kids behind. So that was dope. We love to travel and have our time when we don't have to worry about the kids. And so this was perfect. So we leave the kids and everything's cool. And so so we get to we're on the plane and they're telling us that it's a delay. So I'm like, okay, so what's the delay? Is there a weather delay? Because I mean, like this was October. The weather was perfect in Atlanta, perfect, gonna be perfect in DC. Fall, basically, right? So we're on the plane, and they said the holdup was the staff was a little bit behind. And we was like, what? So like the three stewardess that were going to be on this plane, they were running late. So I'm like, okay, well, damn, were they coming from another flight? What's what? Come to find out that the stewardess were late because they were in line waiting on Popeyes. That's right. They were in line waiting on Popeyes chicken. I mean, and what made it even worse was like when we got on the plane, before they even got on the plane, you could smell like when I got on the plane, I was like, man, why does it smell like grease in here? Like there was a Popeyes chicken smell already in the plane. So I'm like, yo, this is crazy. And so they were about 10 minutes late because they were in line. We're on this airplane. We're on Soul Plane, the real Soul Plane, and it smells like chicken. So this is not going well from the beginning, right? So they get on, and as you're taxiing off, they're giving you the instructions or whatever like that. And the person over the intercom is like, you guys, in case of air pressure drops, you will have, the things that will drop down, and you can put them on your mouth if you want to, but if not, it's okay because we'll be going down anyway. And I'm like, huh? Say what? What do you mean? Like they were joking, and it's like, nah, dog, this ain't no joke. We're about to go 30,000 feet in the air. It ain't playtime, right? So I'm like, okay, these people are they're a little hood, they're a little bit more hood for my liking. So actually, let me go back. Before we boarded, when we got to the counter, the lady at the counter said, "Hey, Mr. 12, Mrs. 12, you guys, something, we qualified for something," and they said they could bump us up or move us up some seats into the exit row. And so, because we got the tickets late again, so we were at the back of the plane. And again, there's no first class, so I was a little, it's whatever. But we're at the back of the plane, so they got us on the exit row. So I'm like, all right, cool, because the exit row, you got a little bit more leg room. I could stretch out my 5'7" frame, and just kind of max. So she changed our ticket, and she said, "Well, let me print up you a new boarding pass." And I'm like, all right, bet, cool. And so we got that done. And then so when it was time to board, you have to scan the joint before you get on the plane, right? So she goes, as we get called on by our section, she goes to scan it, and it goes, She scans mine, she scans Sharice's, and she's like, and this is the same lady who changed our ticket, so she know we not there erroneously. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, well, why is it doing that? She was like, I'm not sure. And so she scanned it again. Scan Sharice. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? She was like, let me see something. So she typed up a couple of things. And then she was like, all right, let me scan it again. So she scanned it again. And then so she hit something in the computer, and then it let us go. So it was like, okay, well, that's weird. And then we got on the plane. So remember this. So we got on the plane. So we're on the plane. We're on the Real Soul plane. After the whole Popeye's chicken incident, we get in the air. They did not even, I think the flight to Baltimore was like an hour and 45 minutes. They did not feed us anything, no sodas, no popcorn, no cookies, no nothing. I mean, we were just in the air. Like, I was like, damn, I'm glad I'm not thirsty. And that's another thing too. Like, I always make sure that I eat before I get on the plane, because you're not going to eat. I've been flying long enough to remember back in the day when I was a little kid, you got an actual meal. Like, I remember the first time I flew to LA, I was in like middle school, right? And I was in like 8th grade. And like, we got a full breakfast, like pancakes, sausage, bacon, eggs. Like, it was like we ate on the plane, you know what I mean? And you can get more. Like, so, I mean, like, it was almost like a buffet, like all you can eat on the plane. And it was like Eastern Airlines. It wasn't that big. And no, I wasn't in first class. So, yeah. So, times have changed, now, people have allergies and all kind of stuff like that. So you can't, there's some airlines don't even do the peanuts and stuff. You just give you cookies, and you might be able to get a soda or something like that, or some orange juice, and that's it. Right. So anyway, so we get to BWI, we land. Like I said, they didn't say much on the flight. I didn't go to sleep. I know that because I never fall asleep on planes. We get to BWI, we land, cool, get to Russ' crib, whatever. So we have a great time in DC at Russ's crib, and everything's cool, right? So we flew out on a Friday. We were coming back on Sunday. Our flight was supposed to leave Sunday at noon. And obviously we had my in-laws watching, our kids. So we had to get back and school the next day, whatever. So we get back to the airport. And again, we get there 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's 2 hours before the flight. We're at the airport 2 hours. And so we go to check in. And I knew something was wrong because I tried to check in on my phone when I was at Russ's crib the night before, because you could check in like 24 hours, and it kept giving me this error message. And I'm like, well, why is this? What's wrong with this? So I deleted the app, downloaded the Spirit app again, nothing. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why I can't? So I kept getting this error. So Sharice tried it. She kept getting an error too. So I was like, what the hell's going on? She was like, well, we'll just fix it once we get to the airport. So we get to BWI. We're chilling, and we walk in. We're trying to, do the thing or whatever like that to check in. And we're trying to check in with our boarding passes, and it's not letting us go through. Like, it's not recognizing it. And so it's saying, like, we're getting an error message. And we kept getting this error message. And I'm like, I tried mine. Sharice tried hers. And I'm like, well, what the hell's going on? And so by this time, I'm starting to get heated, right? Because this shouldn't be. I never had any issues with Delta. When AirTran was here, I used to fly AirTran a lot back in the day. I fly sometimes for work now. So I mostly fly Delta. I've flown Southwest a couple of times. Southwest is okay. But mostly I fly Delta because Atlanta's a Delta hub. So it makes sense for me to fly Delta. And again, I told you guys why we didn't fly Delta this time. So we dealt with Soul Plane, coming. And so now there's an issue, with this boarding pass. So we get in line, because we go, because we were at a kiosk. So we leave the kiosk, we go over here to this line. We're in line for about 20 minutes because it's a long ass line. And there's only 2 people working the line, just 2. Okay. And as the closer and closer we're getting to the front, I'm sensing that the 2 people that are working have attitudes. That's not good. So I'm like, okay, let me just try. Because here's the thing about people with attitudes. You have to, when the person has an attitude, you got to try to meet them, in the middle. You got to try to be nice, and you got to try to give good customer service, even though they're not giving good customer service, right? So I'm like, hey, this is what's happening. We are trying to scan this boarding pass. Neither one of our boarding passes are working. And so the lady, she scans it, dun, 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 dun. And so she's like, And then so she was like, she didn't say anything. She's at the counter. She walks away from the counter and walks behind a door in the back. And we're like, okay. And then she comes back, and then she tries it again. And then she walks in the back again. And this time she comes out with a manager, an assistant manager, I guess. And so the assistant manager tries to type our names in or whatever like that, and error. And so the assistant manager looks at us and says, did you fly from Atlanta? And I said, yes, we flew on Friday. We flew on flight number F127. And she was like, well, you have a round trip ticket, but you can't get on this flight because according to our records, you never flew on the flight from Atlanta. She said, we have no record of you being on that flight. And because you weren't on that flight, we can't let you get on this flight. Oh, hell no. Say what? She explained to me that there was no record of us being on the flight. And because it's a round trip flight, we could not get on a flight that we had already paid for, that we were actually standing in line for, to fly back to Atlanta. Now, keep in mind, again, this is noon and we're trying to get back because we just had a great weekend, but we got to get back to we got to go to day. And this lady is telling me that we have no record. And she's like, did you come to the DMV, the, area or what have you? Did you drive? I was like, no, we flew. She was like, well, sir, we have no record of you being on that flight. And I was like, I was on the flight. I was like, what do you need? I was like, I got the paper right here because I kept something told me to keep it. I kept the paper boarding pass from the flight on Friday. And so the assistant manager goes and she goes and gets somebody else. And then they come. And now, meanwhile, the line behind us is long as hell. And so there are other people going around us, going to see other people at other stations or whatever like that, so they can be helped. And then mysteriously, a couple more people come from out the back or whatever like that. But we're still standing there, and we are totally dumbfounded. And so by this time, Sharice is like hot. I mean, like 38 hot, dog. She's like ready to just explode for real. And I'm trying to keep my cool because of the two of us, I'm the cooler one. But you don't want us to flip flop, because if I become the one that becomes heated, all hell's about to break loose. So again, I'm trying to be cool. And they keep telling me like you weren't on this flight. We have no record. And so they're going through all the databases, all this. I was like, look, man, I don't know what else to tell you other than the fact that I have a boarding pass. There's no way that I could have gotten from Atlanta. I mean, I guess I could have drove if I did, and here's the reason why. And I knew to a degree why it was happening like this. Post 9/11, if you bought it was some type of thing that they regulated with the FAA. If you buy a round trip ticket, you have to get on that flight. Like, you can't, if you take a one-way trip, you got to take the one-way trip, but you can't miss the first flight of the round trip ticket and then jump on the flight coming back. They won't let you do that because it kind of sends off a red flag, because I think that's what the terrorists at 9/11 did. I think they flew one way and they had round trip tickets, but they flew one way or didn't get on the flights, and they flew back or flew wherever the planes were destined to go, and they ended up obviously crashing into World Trade Center and everything else, the fallout from that happened. So that was a post 9/11 thing that I knew about. Obviously had never experienced it before, but I was still like, are you kidding me? Like, there's no way that I'm getting to DC and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to take this flight back to Atlanta. No, that don't happen. So anyway, what we found out was, remember when I told you that we left Atlanta and they couldn't scan the ticket? Well, what happened was the lady who changed our seats in Atlanta on the flight on Friday ended up voiding us out of the system. So that's why she could not scan us when we were trying to get on the flight to leave. And if she had stopped to take a second to understand and realize why she was getting that beeping sound, she could have put us back in the system, but she took us all the way out of the system. And so that's why when we were in Baltimore, we're trying to scan our tickets and we're trying to check in, for a round trip flight. The system is basically recognizing and saying, hey, you don't have a flight. You don't have a return flight because we don't have a record of you even getting on the first flight. So suffice to say, we're hot. And then what makes it even worse, the Real Soul Plane employees tell me to my face, Mr. 12 Kyle, we cannot let you get on this plane. We can try to, because now we're booked up. Because, hey, guess what happened? The 2 seats that we had just got sold to somebody else. Word? I can't believe this. I've been standing here, and I mean, like, this went on for about 30 minutes. I've been standing here, and in the time that I had been standing there, somebody came from behind and bought the 2 tickets that we were supposed to have to get back to Atlanta. Oh, I can't say they bought the tickets. They were on standby. So I'm like, well, so I guess you could say that they bought the tickets because they were on standby, but they gave those 2 tickets to somebody else. So now we are stuck in the airport. And guess what she says? Well, now that we realize what happened, because I think they ended up even calling Hartsville, I think. She said, now that I realize what happened, we can put you on the next flight. Now, I don't want to hear this because at this point in time, I had my mind and heart set on getting back to Atlanta at a certain time. So I said, okay, what time is the next flight? Well, we only have one more flight going back to Atlanta, and that's at 9:00 tonight. Bro, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. All of these flights, and you only have one more flight going back to Atlanta. She was like, yeah, we only have like 2 flights a day. And I'm like, no, I think she said they had 3 flights. They had the other flight was booked, but the only flight that they could put us on was the last flight going out for that particular night. And it was 9:00. And even that flight was full. So I think they had to bump somebody just to get us on. It was a mess. So now we're stuck at the airport. I mean, like, we're not stuck, but we're there, and we have a situation where, you know, we could either stay at the airport for the next 8 hours, or we can go back to Russ's crib. So I'm pissed. Russ like, yo, man, don't worry about it. You know, catch an Uber. He's like, we'll be here, blah, 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 blah. So we caught the Uber, went back to Russ' crib, chill, ate, drank. Because at that point in time, I needed like 5 drinks because my head was about to explode. The Real Soul Plane. And so here's the funny part. We come back at 8 or 7 or whatever for the 9:00 flight, and the kiosk machine is down. I'm like, bro, you got to be kidding me. Like, I can't even check in. So now I got to go back to the counter for them to scan my ticket. And so we do that. And I was like, man, just let me get on this plane. Just let me get on this plane so me and my wife can get back to Atlanta safely so I can see my kids. I was like, I don't want nothing. I was praying. I was like, God, just let me get back safely. I was like, bring the plane up, bring it down safely. I was like, please just don't. I'm about to cuss somebody out. So please just hold my tongue. So we get on the flight, and I think Sharice went to sleep. I can't fall asleep on planes, so I don't go to sleep, but we make it back to Atlanta safely. And as we're walking out, you know, it's like, thank you for flying Spirit, you know, and then they pass out this survey thing, like, will you fly, like asking like a questionnaire, like, will you fly with us again? Will you recommend us? I really almost tore up that survey like in her face. Like, I'm like, man, if you don't get out of my face with this foolishness. But yeah, man, Real Life Soul Plane. It was an adventure to say the least. I don't know if any of you have had any experiences with Soul Plane, but if you did and you had good experiences, let me know. I mean, it could be, I'm not. I was gonna say this could have been a coincidence, but I'm gonna be honest. I don't think it could have been. I don't think it was a coincidence. I think this is just bad business. Like, I will never, and again, I fly a lot. I will pay above and beyond. I'll just put it like that. I'll pay above and beyond to fly anybody other than Soul Plane again. I'm not doing it. Once was enough for me. They got me once. I promise you, they will never, ever, 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 ever get another dime from me. That's going to do it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. Be sure to subscribe because that way you won't miss any episodes. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays. So make sure that you subscribe. You can find the podcast on all DSPs. Again, that's going to do it for me. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5 Gs.